What cop questions are meant to get you in trouble? Now, this is really important. Officers are pros at making you incriminate yourself. I tell my friends this all the time. The first thing I learned in undergrad law classes and being a woman of color is that when you're stopped or pulled over, cops are not trying to make small talk with you. They're simply trying to get more information by doing the whole good cop, bad cop thing. They make you think they're on your side and making small talk, but they're trying to get more evidence or incriminating statements from you. Here's the best example. A pair of officers pulled you over for suspected drinking and driving and asked how many drinks you had that night. Of course, you knew what they were trying to do. At that point, one officer went back and said, "Hold on, let me get fill in the blank of some excuse to stall." The other officers stayed in your car and seemed like they were making small talk. Also, you could just not, be selfish and risk everyone's life by driving under the influence, but whatever, I guess. And then they ask questions like, "So, what did you have for lunch today?" The more you eat, the more you can drink. Empty tummies equals less tolerance for booze. Are you in college? What organizations? Trying to judge your lifestyle. This is very prominent in small towns, and college areas. If you say you're part of a notoriously party rowdy organization, they can see that you are likely to be drinking at that time and or better at holding liquor than somebody else. "Hey, you look like you lift or play sports. What do you do? Sounds cool. Tell me about it." If you lift weights or play something that builds muscle, you can handle more drinks. If you do an activity that makes you skinny and speeds up your metabolism, like running or ballet, you handle booze worse, but it gets out of your system fast. "What'd y'all do today? Did you go to the event that happened earlier today?" Might seem harmless because they're asking about an event that happened hours and hours ago, but it could be very telling about what you're up to now, like maybe there's a after party or something. This one is also huge in college areas. What are you studying and or what do you want to do? College things, certain majors attract certain people. Some majors, people are more likely to know the law and their rights, so the cops need to step up their mind games. Also, do you know how fast you were going means either you tell me you were speeding or I know you're going to lie to me. I was driving on a remote two-lane road, speed limit 60 or 65, going way over the speed limit though. I came over a hill at the same time as a state trooper and he immediately hit his lights. I pulled over quickly and waited for him to turn around. He approached the car and asked if I knew how fast I was going. I said, "Honestly, I don't know. I wasn't paying attention." He said, "I clocked you at 93 miles per hour." I replied, "I won't argue that I was speeding, but I know for a fact that this car doesn't go over 85 miles per hour. He smiled at me and said, "All right, since you were honest with me, I'll be honest with you. I wasn't able to clock you with my radar, but I know you were speeding. Please slow down." I received a written warning, but no ticket. Cops are overworked, underpaid, and extremely busy. They don't give a damn about your day, major, or hobbies. Story 2. Cops throw a combination of rapid fire sentences ending with "okay." The rapid fire part is a tactic to overwhelm your brain. You're in a stressful situation and getting a whole lot of information thrown at you, some of which might be instructions on what to do. The "okay" part is a real trick because they use it in a way for you to confirm you understand what they tell you, and then they slip one in on a question to trick you into giving up your rights. Here's an example. What I'm going to do right now, okay, is fill out some paperwork, okay? I clocked you at driving 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, okay? So what I'm going to need you to do is exit the vehicle, okay? So go ahead and step outside of the car, okay? And keep your hands up, okay? So what I'm going to do right now, okay, is have you stand over here, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and search your car, okay? That last sentence is the key. The way they say, "I'm going to go ahead and search your car," is said in a tone of, "I am telling you what is going to happen next. You do not have a say in the matter." The "okay" part sounds like they are getting confirmation that you understand that he is going to search your car. But what they are really doing is getting you to say yes, because if you do, you have consented to them searching your car. Also, there is a lot of talk about not putting up with crap from cops, etc. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but I will say that depending on the situation, you could be putting your safety or life in danger. So make wise decisions out there, folks. And one more thing, I heard a lot about cops tricking you into admitting guilt by asking if you knew why they pulled you over. A good way to preempt this is to speak first. "Hi, officer, what can I help you with?" Story 3. Like the time I took the report of a stolen Mercedes, the father wasn't home and his 24-year-old son was. The father and mother had left for 2 days, leaving the son home alone with the keys to the vehicle. Dad received a call from his son stating that the car had been stolen. Dad confirmed to me that there were no signs of forced entry to the garage or home, but the garage door had been open and both keys were still at the location without the car. Nothing else was missing from the home as well. Furthermore, I extrapolated that the vehicle had LoJack. Very good. I entered the vehicle into SVS, and I'll be damned, not even 10 minutes later, one of our units who had hardware for locating LoJack hits said he had a stolen vehicle hit. Sure as hell, it was the vehicle. It had been wrecked badly and parked in an apartment parking lot, but there were no signs of forced entry to the doors, and the wiring was fine. I also noticed a small red spot on the driver's side door. Lastly, the car was a push start and nothing was stolen from inside the car. Phone chargers, a debit card, etc. The truth was right there in front of me. I had a push to start, and I had to be in the seat to start it with the key. I explained to the father that his son took his car, wrecked it, brought the keys home, opened the garage, and lied about the house being burglarized to cover himself. I also told the father that I could have my CSI technicians come out to swab the stain, and I bet it would come back to their son. They didn't care to hear any more as they were livid at their son, and they knew as well as he was lying. Of course, this wouldn't be enough probable cause to place the son behind the wheel in court, but I felt pretty confident that if I had tested that, I could have proved the son had lied about who took the car. Story 4. Where were you coming from? Where were you going? Why? It seems simple, but if you lie, you sound like an idiot and they know something is up. I had a cop pull me over for failing to change lanes at a fake traffic stop. Minnesota law said you had to change lanes or slow down, but the dummy car he was parked behind was right at the ramp. If I had changed lanes, I would have actually broken the law by having to do a double lane change. It was a straight up ticketing scam. Either way, he rolled up on me and pulled me over. Do you know why? Etc., etc. I said, yes, I know I did not make a full lane change, but it was not safe to do so. As such, I slowed down and moved over as much as was safe. I do actually talk this way when I'm stressed out, on the spectrum, etc. He came back with, where are you going? I said, St. Paul. He said, St. Paul is east, you're going west. I said, my brother's getting married. I have to get all this stuff to the church, and that's why I'm wearing a suit and a top coat. I'm taking 62 to 35 to 94 to 280 and making a right just after university and going to the church on the corner there. Then I have to trade cars and get to downtown Minneapolis, meet my brother, come back and have a wedding. Then I have to drive south down to some godforsaken place on the St. Croix and set up his reception. I got a warning. Moral, if you can answer the where are you going question with detail, they kind of just had to let you go. If you answer with any inconsistencies, they'll screw you. Story 5. I had a state trooper detain me in the cop car because I was on the side of the road with a flat tire and she assumed I had hit and run someone. So, going back to the beginning, she acted nice as I asked her what street I was on, as I was in a place I wasn't familiar with and had taken a wrong turn and gotten lost. Well, she said, come on in the car and I'll drive you back up so we can fix this. As she started driving up, she asked where I had hit the curb. I was like, I don't know, somewhere from here to there. Just check for a tire mark on the curb. She did not. She ended up detaining me in the car for 3 hours, saying I was out of it, but she refused to give me a breathalyzer. I live by myself, and it was about 3:30 a.m., and I had to have my parents pick me up so someone could drive my car home while I rode with the others because I was quote-unquote tipsy. There were like 5 cops on the scene, and they made my almost 70-year-old dad change the tire while they watched. The cops even illegally searched my car while I was illegally detained. I wanted to sue so badly, but what am I supposed to say? A cop's word always wins against yours, so there's no point. I've had so many bad run-ins with cops being jerks and trying to intimidate me that I get hardcore anxious around cops now. This kind of crap can happen to anyone. Story 6. I once got out of a ticket by not letting the officer ask the first question. It was a 2-lane highway and I was behind an SUV. As we went around a long curve, there was a rig in the other lane. The SUV paced the rig all the way around the curve. When he finally got a little ahead, I gunned it and went around him because I knew there was a light coming up and I didn't want to get stuck behind both of them. As I zoomed by, he put on his lights. He walked up to my car. I rolled down my window, put my fingers to the bridge of my nose, winched, and said, "That was a pretty stupid thing to do, wasn't it?" He laughed and made small talk for a couple of minutes just to try to draw out anything worse I might have been doing. I was just honest and friendly in my replies without actually admitting any wrongdoing. I hadn't really done anything that was a hard definition of illegal other than a very brief moment of speeding to get past him, which obviously he couldn't have clocked. He walked back to the car, checked my license, came back, and said, "Okay, I think I've held you up long enough to punish you for this. Keep the speed down. Have a nice day." Overall, I've gotten out of it or had the fine reduced on two-thirds of the times I've been pulled over by being friendly and honest as possible without directly admitting any wrongdoing. Well, any kind of situation will always benefit from a little humor and a lot of humility, especially if it's in front of a cop. And if you don't mind my asking, a little something to remind you of, please do hit those like and subscribe buttons if you're new here and or you're loving the content so far. That helps personally keep me going with this channel and of course finding and digging up the best stories to share with you. Story 7. Telling you that someone else has already admitted that you committed the crime with them. When my grandpa was young, he had some cops question him about stealing of farmers' chickens, which he didn't do. And they told him that his friends had already all admitted to stealing the chickens. Something kind of similar also happened to my husband. The place he worked was robbed overnight. He was on the closing shift, so he was the obvious suspect. The cop is asking him questions, then pulls out a stack of tapes claiming he had it on video. My husband responded, "No, you don't," and left it at that, basically calling the cops bluff. He didn't do it. He was home with me and our baby. Best part, there were no cameras in that store. The same cop tried to fluster me and asked me where we were that evening. It had been a few weeks by that point. I replied that I wasn't totally sure since I'd had a baby less than a month prior. He tried to get hard on me by saying that if I didn't remember, over the phone by the way, then he'd arrest my husband. I responded by saying, with as much southern animosity as I could muster, "Well, he was with me, but do I need to come down there? I can be there in 5 minutes. Well, no, ma'am." He told my husband that I'm abrasive. Story 8. Depending on the situation, though, this can get you out of trouble. During my post-secondary years when I was going through my practicums and clinical, I went through a number of checkpoints over what were restricted driving hours for my license. I hadn't yet finished all the different levels for a full one. Whenever I answered why I was driving and where to go, home from hospital practice and vice versa, they would ask for my student and hospital ID. When they saw it, they let me off. If they wanted to, they would have been at liberty to take my license, write me a fine, and impound my car for 24 hours. They also let me off once because I was driving a tipsy friend home and once because I was picking someone up from the airport. So being what I thought was a reasonably polite person who answered their reasonable questions was well worth it. In the interest of public safety, it's kind of their business. When I find someone walking around restricted areas of the hospital, I ask the same sorts of questions. 9 out of 10 times they are lost and I help them get to where they want to go. But when they start giving illogical non-answers, I know they're either a confused patient who wandered off or are up to no good. Opening with, "Hey, where are you going?" is a lot nicer than alternatives. Story 9. The cops where I live have nothing better to do than torment people who look like they smoke and do speed traps every couple of miles in this very small township. I remember this one time I got pulled over for making a turn towards my development. The cops thought it was shady that I left the highway when they were next to me. What am I supposed to do, drive off-road further down? So they made an illegal turn at the light and questioned me why I hadn't turned at the light. I told them it's because it was illegal. Then I noticed both cops were right up against my driver's side door. One looked ready to open the door and the other came in behind to grab me. I asked what they were doing and they got so mad that I asked them a question. Then they started talking about searching me and my car for making a legal turn inside of their illegal turn. They were state troopers who knew it was legal to do what I did, but they were just being shady cops trying to make something out of nothing. Bonus points if they pull you over and say they smell booze. When you say no and they're confident you're right, they drop back and pretend it's a smell from under the hood. Story 10. I had a cop pull this devious tactic on me at a DUI checkpoint. Nope, I don't drink booze at all. So he was asking the usual questions. Where are you coming from? Work? Where are you going? Home? How long have you worked there? Etc. And then he suddenly got all casual and said, "Well, if you have been drinking, you sure fooled me." I thought it was an odd thing to say, and I know to be careful with what I say to a cop because of the tricks they use. So, just to be safe, I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He looked away for a second, said something else, I don't remember what exactly, and then went right back and said the exact same line. At that point, I knew something odd was going on. So I asked him if he were done and could I leave. At that, he let me go. Later, after trying to figure out what that was all about, I realized if I had said anything to the affirmative, yes, or even nodded, it would be as if I said, "Yes, I am fooling you. I have been drinking." In my opinion, this is a pretty despicable way to get someone to unknowingly admit guilt to something they may not even be guilty of. All right, hold up. So, what exactly is the bare minimum that we have to say to a cop? I'm sure a stare or a gaze or a nod isn't sufficient. For sure, name and date of birth at the least, right? Social security number? I don't know. Story 11. I went through a RIDE program with my parents one night. I was the DD designated driver, and the car had fairly dark but legal tints, making it a very nice car for a young guy to be driving. My parents had some drinks, so the car obviously smelled like booze. I pulled up and put down my window, and the cop leaned in and asked if I had been drinking tonight. I honestly answered no. He then asked if I was sure. I said yes. Then came the standard, where are you going? What are you doing? Types of questions, which I answered honestly. Then he started badgering me and kept asking if I was sure I had nothing to drink. I answered, the only thing I have had to drink tonight has been water and pop. I am the designated driver tonight. Adding in DD usually gets them off of me. After a couple more "are you sures?" my mom leaned forward from the back seat and stared down at the officer. After a few seconds of silence, he told me to have a good night and to keep going. I thanked him for the pleasant conversation and for keeping the road safe, then I drove away. Story 12. Cops are allowed to lie to you to trick you into giving up your rights. There was a news article about either South Carolina or North Carolina cops who were basically going up to people's houses and saying they had received a 911 call and could they come in to check everything out. There were no 911 calls, it was just a trick. Cops have just a ton of tricks they use on people, and I mean a ton of them. Some are legal, some are not. Like when they search for you, they bring their hand up while frisking your leg. You obviously react and then they tackle you for resisting. Or when they come to your door to do a knock and talk, the moment you open the door, they step forward so that they are not entering your home, but if you shut the door will make contact with their belly or chest, and that is technically battery on a police officer. And they can arrest you for that. Like I said, they have a ton of tricks they use against people. Story 13. I drove to meet up with a friend of mine in a pretty wealthy downtown area one night to see a movie. We ended up smoking in her car before catching the movie. By the time the movie ended, it was pretty late and the downtown area had pretty much closed down. By this time, I wasn't as baked, but maybe still a tad faded. I got confused about which freeway to take to go home, and of course, an officer pulled me over. He asked me if I had been drinking that night, to which I replied no, which was true. He told me that my eyes and my trembling voice were telling him differently, so he had me take a breathalyzer test. I blew a 0, and he looked defeated. I told him that I wasn't too familiar with the area and just got lost, so he simply told me how to go home and to have a safe night. I guess it didn't occur to him that I had smoked grass instead of drinking. Story 14. When I was a young adult, my friends and I got busted smoking grass. The cops were super nice about it. We gave them what they wanted and we all ended up joking around. They let us off with a substance diversion, like a what not to do with substances and how to take them safely class. Although we had about 4 times more on us than we handed over, knowing they wouldn't search us if we complied. How much did you girls pay for this? If we told them how much we actually paid instead of how much the stuff we got busted with was worth, we definitely would have gotten a court date. I think they were trying to see if we were stoned and would give ourselves up, but we hadn't even sparked it yet. Well played. They've probably gotten a few people with that one. Okay, so wow, who knew these kinds of questions weren't as simple as they actually sound? Now we know. Knowing is half the battle, G.I. Joe, right? I guess you gotta be on your toes when dealing with the law, but if you'd love to see the others' perspective during these situations, hop on over to the next video. Police officers, what are your best pullover stories? Trust me, story 3 is kind of a wild ride. I'll see you there, and thank you for watching this one.